Welcome to the Aging Well podcast. I'm Jeff Armstrong here with Corbin Bruton. In this and the episodes that follow, we will share candid discussions on aging and hear from the experts. We are here to inform and encourage as we experience, aging. Is there one workout that can slow the aging process? In this episode, we discuss an article titled, "The Best Workout to Slow Aging and Promote Longevity, Science Reveals." We address the role of aerobic exercise, specifically high-intensity interval training, and give our 2 cents plus on what exercise is best for aging well.
Do you remember in a previous podcast where we talked about how there's kind of a lot of false information out there, but it sounds so good and it's super attention grabbing that people kind of like buy into a lot of the myth of what they need to do in order to do the latest and greatest trend to be healthy?
That was just one podcast?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what Sandy Griffin refers to my no bullshit approach to fitness.
That's right.
There's a lot of that BS out there and a lot of not necessarily misinformation, but I think information that is kind of skewed in a way to create yet another fitness article. Why, do you have an article in mind?
I do. So I sent it to you earlier this week, and it's actually from Eat This, Not That.
Which sounds very scientific.
Which super scientific, but it does say on there in the opening sentence is the best workout to slow aging and promote longevity, science reveals. And as you dive in and you read it, it does give a shout out to a few of the scientific reviews, but a lot of it is aerobic activity, cardio, things that we kind of, it can be helpful as far as building cardio and endurance, but it goes against all of the resistance training and the things that we really talk about and preach as far as aging well and what the aging well, or what the aging population needs to do to truly maintain that longevity.
Yeah, I think, first of all, with the title of that, where it says the workout, it's like it implies that there's only one workout. And of course, you go into the article, they talk about several different aspects of cardiovascular, high intensity, aerobic exercise. But I do think it misses very profoundly a piece of the puzzle that we've been talking about, which is the strength training. But let's kind of dive into this article a little bit. What do they tell us is the workout that we should be doing to promote longevity?
All right. Well, I'll just dive into it a little bit, but it says, so the opening paragraph is, want to whip up your own recipe for a fountain of youth and slow down aging? We're going to tell you exactly how to do it. Research indicates that performing high intensity workouts on a regular basis will foster longevity. You heard that right. High intensity fitness is an amazing workout to slow aging and promote longevity. Ready to help yourself look and feel so much younger and healthier? We're here to tell you, and let's get started. So it starts off good, right? Because we've mentioned HIIT training and HIIT training, and there is a lot of benefits about that. But when you actually dive into it, it's just it's not even high intensity. It then goes into the recommended amount of moderately intense aerobic exercises for Americans, according to the guidelines, is a minimal of 150 minutes each week, in the addition to 2 a day muscle and strength training. So it does give a shout out to strength training.
Which is a positive, I think, of the ACSM guidelines more recently. Is in the past, they not really talked about strength and conditioning quite as much. And they're still kind of, I think, weak in terms of the recommendations. They are starting to talk a little bit more about some of the neuromotor skill-related aspects of fitness as well. But yeah, that big emphasis has been on aerobic exercise, particularly moderate to intense exercise. But the interesting thing is, statistically, I think it was revealed in a study over COVID that less than 23%, I think it was, percent of the population actually meets those minimum guidelines. So we have a really, really small percentage of the population. It's meeting the minimum guidelines just simply for physical activity. We're not really even talking about exercise. And so you start breaking down those numbers, you got to figure that probably half of those people that aren't or are meeting the physical activity guidelines are not meeting a reasonable intensity of exercise that's going to really promote longevity. And so this is a step in the right direction, but again, I think it misses the mark a little bit. But let's go on.
Well, and then it kind of gives you the example of what you need to do as far as your resistance training. And they actually have a YouTube video that's attached to it, and it's what you would define as stereotypical core strength, where you're laying on the ground. You're either doing leg lifts or, like this example that they're giving, they're doing oblique twist. But the woman's it's not a Russian twist. I mean, she's laying on the ground, and then she's taking one hand and just twisting it across her body. And that's not the ideal way to have resistance training.
No, it's not resistance training. I mean, it's an element of core training. And I think that's an important foundation to lead into doing effective strengthening exercise. But again, yeah, when we start immediately promoting abdominal exercise above any other type of exercise, I think we hugely miss the mark.
So then it goes into, and I kind of like this one. So it says high intensity interval training, which is our HIIT, can slow down aging and foster longevity. There's no denying that. Yeah. We've definitely talked about that. And it does say that studies say so. So diving into it, it says, if your goal is to live longer, a healthier life, we can't stress enough just how important it is to add high intensity interval training to your weekly regimen. HIIT is a workout that switches between vigorous bouts of exercise and moves at a slower pace. According to AARP, studies indicate that on a cellular level, performing HIIT workouts can slow down the aging process. And then it gives you the actual related topic, what science says about exercise habit that slows down aging.
Yeah, and one problem I have with any of the popular press when it comes to educating us on fitness is, it quotes AARP, who says that science reveals. And so you're already two steps away from the actual science that is behind it. Rather than saying, Dr. So-and-so and colleagues stress or have found in this particular study, they cite another article that somebody else, and chances are you're going to go through several different articles before you actually get to the actual research that's stating it. But that being said, I do think that there is some truth to what they're saying in terms of the longevity in HIIT.
And then if you click on that article, it does have good points because it says working out keeps your body young from the inside out. That's very attention grabbing. It does say that constant exercise can basically defy the aging process. We talk about that here on our podcast. Aerobic exercise gives your heart so much love and goodness. Debatable, right?
What is love and goodness? I mean, come on, that's very scientific, physiological terminology there.
It's not too late to reverse a sedentary lifestyle, which we talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
It's really never too late to start. You may even slow down the aging of your brain by exercising. So these are all good attention grabbing things, a lot of the same stuff that we preach on. But then if you break down what each paragraph is under each one of those catchphrases, they're talking about doing cardio. This one says dynamic exercises from a moderate intensity that exceeds 70 to 80% of your maximum heart rate, maintaining that aerobic through biking or brisk walking. As far as their resistance training goes, they are suggesting super light weights and way more higher repetition.
Which again, I was kind of planning on diving into this a little bit later in the podcast, but it kind of comes up now, I think, is to talk about that training continuum where we run a spectrum from really physical activity to pure strength exercise. And as we move across that continuum from physical activity, and it's important to be more active, to just simply be moving, that has health benefits. We know that, and that's going to have some effect on your longevity. But if we stay trapped in that, we're not going to see many of the other benefits that we can get from the further along on the continuum. So we move up in intensity and we get into more aerobic exercise, whether steady state or low to moderate intensity, long distance training, or whatever it might be. We're potentially working on improving the cardiorespiratory health. But again, if we're not progressively overloading the system, we hit a certain threshold and then we kind of stay there and it becomes maintenance and it's not improving our health.
Right.
And it's not necessarily even further affecting our longevity. We can continue to progress that longevity as we move further along that continuum. And that moves us into HIIT type of training, high intensity interval training, which allows us to do more work in less time, better stimulate the muscles. But still, we're not building strength. We're not building muscle endurance as much doing those activities. We move into high intensity interval resistance training. And we had a recent episode that we did talk about HIIT versus HIIT. And that's the 2I HIIT. There's also the 1I HIIT, which is high intensity resistance training, which moves us further along that continuum. That's where we're starting to get a little bit more muscle endurance work, probably a little bit more hypertrophy, some strengthening out of that maybe has a little less cardiovascular benefit to it. But as we'll come back to, that strengthening activity feeds back into our ability to do more physical activity, do more aerobic based activity, to do more HIIT type of training, then that's going to feed our cardiorespiratory system. And then if we move further along, we move into more straight up muscle endurance, higher repetition, bisets kind of working out, and then pure strength, which is more weight, lower reps, then we're working on strength. But if we neglect the focus on strength, eventually we hit a point where we can't do more cardio because we lack the physical ability to do more work. Or as we age, we see the natural decline in muscle mass, which is referred to as sarcopenia. And as the muscles atrophy, particularly if all we're focusing in on is cardio, we're going to lose muscle mass. Eventually, our ability to do work to maintain our cardiorespiratory endurance is going to diminish, and we start to see a decline in our VO2 max just because we can't do as much activity. And I think historically, we have generally promoted that it's natural to see a decline in cardiorespiratory endurance as we age, because that's the natural aging process in the cardiorespiratory system. And there's some truth to that, but I don't think it needs to drop off quite as much. What's happening is we're losing our physical ability to do that work, which diminishes our capacity to maintain our cardiorespiratory endurance. So I think that training continuum is an important thing that's kind of missed in this. We just simply say high intensity and then do resistance exercise, but what they end up promoting is doing the same dumbbell curls. And again, we talked about, is a 10-pound dumbbell enough weight to provide for your fitness needs? And it's probably not. You can't get strong with the same 10-pound dumbbell. Maybe initially, yes, but over time, eventually you got to start lifting heavier weights.
Right.
You got to, as Sue mentioned in episode 48 or 49, no, 48 or 49, whichever one it was, with, when we talked about from kidney donor to weightlifter, she learned to, as she said, love the bar. And I love that quote. I learned to love the bar. And it's like, that just means I have a more passion for heavy lifting.
Do you want to know why she loved it? It's because she was always raising it.
Ooh. Okay. Very clever there. But yeah, when we are just lifting these light dumbbells, we don't have a passion for the bar. But when I start deadlifting and squatting, and I'm wanting to put more weight on that bar in proper technique.
Correct.
Then that's where we begin to fight back against the aging process and increase our longevity.
Well, I mean, even, gosh, they have photos that are in here. I don't think a single person is using over 8 pounds. I see a lot of those 3, 5 pound weights. No one's sweating. It doesn't talk about form or technique. It doesn't talk about fatigue. So if you are doing high intensity interval training, keyword there is high intensity, you're going to get fatigue. And that's where you have to be aware of your form and technique. You can't just dive into it. Speaking of high intensity, going back to the article, it does say more research links high intensity workouts to longevity. That is 100% true. We've spoken about it. We've even talked about it a few sentences ago on this podcast. So that is true. I do agree with that. It says research studies between 1,567 individuals in their 70s for a period of 5 years via ABC News.
Again, yeah, they go to the multimedia, the popular press articles for their citations instead of going to the original source, which I encourage our listeners to not just take social media or popular media at their word. When they talk about a research article, read that article, because sometimes they're pulling a small piece out of an article that may have a lot more information in it or have a rather different conclusion than what they're drawing from it. I discussed my epigenetics test with True Diagnostic co-founder Hannah Wendt in episode 162. Epigenetic testing measures baseline and changes in your pace of aging, giving you the power to steer your anti-aging or health and wellness journey in the right direction. I learned that I am aging well. Click on the affiliate link in the episode description, use the promo code AGEWELL, and receive a 12% discount on your epigenetics test and monitor your pace of aging.
So the last paragraph on this one is, exercise is just as important to enhancing your life while you're living as it is to ward off mortality. Again, this is something that we preach on this podcast. However, diving into it, there's no research. It shows it's coming from ABC News. Now, why are we bringing this up? Aren't these all wonderful things? Isn't this things that you guys talk about? It is, but it's kind of a false advertisement of it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's advertisement, but it's just a kind of a skewed perspective. I think it, again, a lot of these are, they're the media. They need articles on a regular basis. And so we keep rehashing the same BS and, presenting it in a different package and expect people to just eat it up. And it doesn't go deeper into it. It doesn't give us all the information. And I think, while this has some good points to the article, and it does, if you dig deep enough, is supported by reasonable evidence, it's missing big pieces of the puzzle. We have to remember that physical fitness and obviously then longevity, because physical fitness leads to longevity. And we had the episode a while back where we did talk about how we can extend our longevity. There is a lot of research being done trying to find kind of those magic pills, literally, where pharmacologically we can alter the aging process. And we're still neglecting the fact that by our actions, our activities or inactivities, we can affect our longevity, and that exercise and diet have a profound physiological effect on our body that impacts how we age. And, we have to look at the whole picture when it comes to improving our life and aging well. And aerobic fitness is very important, but I think if we only focus on the aerobic, even if it's just high intensity interval training, yeah, you're going to have probably a little bit more longevity out of that. You might counter a little bit of the sarcopenia that might occur from inactivity, but we're still not living as well as we could. We're not building strength that is going to allow, we talk frequently about Carmine's law and, that strength plus posture equals balance. If you think of that, okay, I'm doing a stationary bike and I'm doing a, Tabata style workout, 20 seconds on, 10-second recovery for the 8 cycles. I'm doing as best I can to meet that IE1 protocol that makes it a true Tabata. You could be doing that, but you're not improving your balance because you're moving in a very linear fashion, in that same plane of movement. You're not having to really focus in on balance. You're not using your upper body. You might get a little bit better leg strength and leg endurance, but it's not going to be that great. That's going to have a diminishing return to you. It can't be the only thing you do. It's not improving your balance, not improving posture. What else do you need to do? And so we have to look at the health components of physical fitness being cardiorespiratory endurance, muscle strength, flexibility, and body composition. And of course, body composition is kind of a result of those other really first 3 components. But then we also want to look at the neuromuscular components of physical fitness: speed, strength, power, agility, balance, coordination, and reaction time. Those aren't necessarily happening in a HIIT program either. And maybe to benefit resistance training, rather than doing a strict interval type of training, doing farlex, where an external source is giving you that cue to ramp up your intensity. So now, you're not sitting there, okay, I got 30 more seconds of recovery and then I'm going to have this hard bout. Now your body is forcing itself to recover, not knowing how soon you're going to have to go into the ATP-PC system and really ramp up your intensity. And you're going to have to react and respond to that from some audio or physical cue. So there's a lot more that we can do in the exercise to further benefit the longevity process.
And the things that they're claiming in here, they're not false in the fact that, I'm actually a huge advocate for HIIT training. I do like HIIT training. I'm a huge, way bigger fan of hybrid style training, kind of like what you're talking about, where we got to hit everything. What I mean by this article being false is they're making it more of a leisurely stroll, and they're making it more of, oh, you just need to be mildly moving. That's not the case. Even the examples that they show in the article as far as exercises, or if you're adding your quote unquote resistance training, like I said, it's super lightweight, and it's almost below maintainability.
I think from societal perspective, it's not a falsehood, because we're not hitting any of the marks. And so even, doing what they purport you should be doing in this particular article for probably 3/4 of the American population, that's going to have a significant effect on their longevity. If you go out and just start walking at a gentle pace, every day, 30 minutes of walking, say you maybe cover 2 miles in that's 200 kilocalories per day. Say 1,000 to 1,400 kilocalories per week. That's going to add up to some level of weight loss throughout the year. And so you lose 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 pounds just from doing something. That's going to have a very positive effect on your longevity. But there's so much more we can do.
Right.
And we don't want to give the impression that if that's all I do, I'm going to, significantly improve my longevity. I think we are in such bad health and shape in this country that doing a bare minimum amount of activity is going to have a significant effect on the health of the nation. But there is so much more that we can do to really, improve that longevity. So do you want to exercise to be able to live an extra 2 years? or you want to live an extra 5 years, 10 years? And when we look at longevity too, some of this, just this minimal amount of physical activity is going to improve our years on this earth. But what's the quality of those years as well? And one of the reasons that I get on the soapbox about strength training is that it's going to have the most profound effect on your quality of life in those latter years. So the cardio, yeah, can add 5, 6, 10 years to my life. But if I can't move as much, I'm, maybe resigned to, maybe slow walks around the neighborhood. My pace is slowed down a little bit. I can't hike and I can't do a lot of the things that I really like to do, but I'm still, hey, I'm alive. That's good. That's always a positive, right? I woke up this morning, I took a breath, everything is good. Is that what we want in our longevity? Or do we want, hey, I'm 95 years old and, I just hiked the Grand Canyon this summer. I want the latter.
Right. Why settle?
Right.
Why be mediocre?
I saw a meme, as we're recording this, the United Kingdom lost their queen. She passed away. And I saw a meme that compared, it's a picture of Betty White next to a picture of the queen. And it was like Betty White lived at 99 and the queen, I think was 94, 95. She was younger than Betty White. And, it was not the most appropriate kind of meme, but it was basically saying, chalk one up for USA, basically our Betty White lived longer than the queen. But I think, there's a certain element in there. I mean, the quality of life that Betty White had going into, everybody thought she was going to live to 100 and beyond because she was such a spry, active, alive woman. The queen has been declining for many, many years. And, when my daughter texted me that the queen had died, and everybody, was all surprised. I'm like, why are they surprised? She was old. Old people pass. I mean, I don't mean that in a cruel way. You're going to piss
off an entire nation.
No, I don't. I mean, I don't think the people of the United Kingdom were surprised that she passed away. I mean, she had gone into, I think she had been in the hospital. She was under, kind of watchful care. Her health was definitely declining. And so you get to your advanced years, it's inevitable that one day is going to be your last. Hopefully, as we are younger and more fit, we are looking at far more years and days ahead of us. But as we kind of approach that octogenarian level, we're starting to count our days. It's not a negative thing. It's like, you get to a point in life that every day becomes much more blessing to be able to live one more day because you're, 99, 100 years old. Yeah. At that point, I'm not necessarily looking at living another 10 years when I'm 100. I'm looking at living the best damn year I can this year and hope that maybe then it brings me to 101. And so when we look at longevity, I think in aging well, I think it's very important that we be looking at the quality of those years that we are adding, not just simply the years that we are adding. Does that make sense?
Quality, not quantity.
Yeah. Well, I want quantity, but I want quality.
Right.
And I don't want to be living longer because the pharmaceutical industry has provided me with a pill that allows me to counteract years and years of bad living and, just extend my, crappy living. I want to be living quality years for as long as possible. And,
and I think a lot of people do too. And I think they try and pull their own research and they're like, well, I don't want to go to the pharmaceutical route. I want to go the exercise and fitness route. I want to go the nutrition route. I'm going to do my own research. And we have so much information that's out there at our fingertips, and it's only going to get more information as we mature as a society and continue to spring forward into that digital age. However, the information that we are getting, the information that we're receiving, we want to make sure that the sources are valid and that the sources are good and that the sources aren't just either snipping, copying and pasting certain little positive things like, oh, just do this and you'll be fine. You want to provide the whole information. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about on this podcast. That last article that we were just going over, it had good key points. It has a lot of things that we discuss here on this podcast, but how it's being presented as far as the type of exercises that, not the big words of, HIIT training's great. It'll add longevity. Yes, that is a true statement. But then actually diving into it, it's not a true HIIT. It's just it's almost not pushing yourself exercise, but it's okay to be compliant as long as you're moving.
Yeah, I think it's, the whole idea is, this is like a puzzle. One piece gives you a small picture of what's going on, and you can't just stop there. You can't just do a small section of the puzzle and say, okay, yeah, that's the Grand Canyon. You have to draw in all of the pieces. And this is one very important piece to longevity. I do not discount anything that they're saying in the article with regard to increasing your aerobic fitness, doing more high intensity interval training, even doing HIIT training. But it's a small piece of the puzzle. You can't just take one step, and keep repeating that same step over and over again and think that that's going to have the best results over time. Baby step, you take that one step. Maybe for the listener right now who is looking to get into better shape, better health, lose some body lose some body fat, just improve their longevity some, just simply getting off the couch, getting active is a good first step. And we start getting active, we start moving a little bit, and then maybe we move into, okay, I'm going to start doing a little bit more high intensity interval training or just simply interval training. And then I move into the HIIT, and then maybe into HIIT. And then I got to start doing some resistance training as well, because it's going to benefit me in these other areas. I have to look at my diet, and diet is going to be stepwise. Change one thing at a time. We do these little baby steps along the way. Those all have a cumulative effect. One single step is not going to dramatically improve our longevity. It's these numerous steps taken in sequence and with consistency and with commitment that is going to allow us to age well.
Right. And someone's out there probably thinking, okay, guys, I get it. Cardio is not the best way. Let's definitely dive into resistance training. Well, there's another article that's out there, and it says, over 60, here are 5 of the best exercises you can possibly do. This total body workout builds strength, stability, mobility, and a better posture. Everything we talk about, everything we preach about, right? And it's 5 of the best workouts that are going to do it. You think just by hearing about it, it's going to be that 5x5 program, right?
No, not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
I would think, 5 exercises. I'm going to lead that to squat, hip hinge, some kind of press, horizontal press, vertical press, and then a pulling activity. Our 5 basic exercises, the basic 5 that we talk about.
Well, you're right on the squat. So they suggest the dumbbell goblet squat as number 1. Number 2, they suggest the side plank with rotation, 10 reps on each side.
Okay.
Number 3, they suggest band pull apart. So you take a band, hold it out in front of you, and you pull it out.
Okay. Not bad for posture.
Not bad for posture. They do suggest a split squat, which I like this, especially with that aging population. Split squats are going to be great for those that have a hard time with lunges. Plus, it kind of isolates and it allows them to have more control over their body. So they're like, okay, I'm just going to go down and up in one motion, and then I can do down and up in the other versus lunge, lunge, lunge each leg.
Well, it's essentially a lunge. It's just,
it's just
talking about an elevated rear foot, so a Bulgarian split squat, as opposed to just a stationary lunge.
Push-ups, which is one of the pushing.
Horizontal press.
And that's it.
So no pulling exercise.
There's no pulling exercise minus
no hip hinge.
Minus the band pull apart.
Band pull apart, I would consider that more of it's a horizontal pull, but it is really more focused on your trapezius, your rhomboids, your smaller upper back muscles,
Which is good for posture.
which is good for posture. But again, more of a fuller horizontal pull or a pull down type of exercise would be much better. I mean, again, that's not a bad article, but what we can't deceive people into thinking is that there's a simple solution to all of this, that pick 5 exercises and do those repeatedly over time with no progression, you're going to be fine. If those are the only 5 exercises you do and you do a progression with them, then you're going to see some benefit. You're not going to have a nice V-shaped back doing just those banded pulls, but that same motion can be repeated a lot of different ways. And essentially, if they're saying a horizontal pull, there's countless ways of doing a good horizontal pull that I think would be beneficial. The push-up, for most Americans, simply being able to do a handful of good quality push-ups is probably a huge accomplishment. But progressing that eventually to where you're able to really push more than just your body weight. I prefer a push-up over a bench press for a lot of reasons, but it becomes difficult to really overload that at some point. So you need other alternatives. But, okay, so the squat, the split squat, which again, squat, split squat, that's the same motion. It's just it's a variation of the same movement. We're not having the hip hinge in there. So I think that's lacking in that advice. We could improve on the horizontal pull. You had the bench press, which is a horizontal push or pull, or horizontal press. No vertical press.
The bench press? There isn't bench. There's
the push-up is basically a bench press.
There's nothing wrong with push-ups, in my opinion.
No, I think, we want to be progressing those and not just simply adding more repetitions to the push-up.
Right.
At some point, you want to be overloading the weight, not just simply the repetitions or the endurance aspect of it.
And
but there's no overhead press.
No, there's not. And I do kind of get it, because it's like, well, this is for individuals that are over 60, and 60's kind of coming into that geriatric age and senior citizens. So we want to do more low impact stuff for them. But why? Right? We talked about Sue.
You want shoulder health.
Sue wants to be a power lifter. Yeah. Great job, Sue. Yeah. Way to love the bar and raise it at the same time.
But with the overhead press, I think, there can be some shoulder issues as we age. Obviously, we should try and avoid those. I personally have, shoulder issues that are just wear and tear because of the structure of my acromion, but I can adjust to that. Right. And I've been doing a lot more like landmine presses, which changes the plane of motion, but is still working those muscles and gives me a little bit more of a vertical press as opposed to just simply a horizontal press. And in many ways, that horizontal press in the bench press form can be a bit more damaging to the shoulders as well. And so I stick with my basic 5, a squat, hip hinge, row, bench, overhead press, variations of those, and then add to those plus the carries. Now, they do a side plank with rotation. I think that's a very difficult exercise for an unfit older adult to do. I don't mind the plank as a starting point for core strength, but I do think we need to progress that to anti-rotational, rotational, multi-angular rotation in those acceleration, deceleration. I'm big on my Bulgarian bag. So that one exercise they give there's a lot of alternatives to there that I think would be probably better choices to say is if you're only doing one exercise, do this. But at least they're focused a little bit more on the rotational aspect of the core. They didn't say crunches. So
no, they did not.
Yeah. So, okay. But I think, again, keep to the basics, stick to the basic 5 plus the carries. There's a lot we can do with the carries. I think we've talked about that, so the listener can kind of relate back to that article. And so I think we've done a pretty good job picking this apart today. There's pluses and minuses with the information that is out there. We need to be wise consumers of the information that is there, but don't take just one piece of the puzzle and think that's the key to longevity.
Right.
I think, there's far more things going on that cause us to age poorly that need to be addressed, whether it's diet, the type of exercise that we're doing, the quantity, the quality of the exercise we're doing, the other aspects of mental functioning, doing more mental tasks in order to maintain our brain function. I'd refer the listener back to the interview with Rob Winningham to talk a little bit about what we can do to exercise the brain in order to promote longevity. And not necessarily are we going to prevent dementia. I don't know that the data are out there to say that we can prevent it per se, but we can certainly delay it, and we can prolong, I don't want to say prolong the effects, because we don't want to prolong dementia, but we want to kind of slow the effects of dementia, to be able to have better quality of those later years through mental exercise, physical exercise, cardiorespiratory exercise, eating well, all the things that we kind of talk about on this podcast. I mean, because that is the goal, is to age well, not just simply age.
Right.
Because I don't want just a number on, hey, it's my 100th birthday, but, I'm in really lousy shape. I want to have that 100th birthday just be, a kick-ass year for me.
Well, I think it's also okay to question things too, right? You can't just say, well, I heard it from this one source, therefore it must be true. Well, I heard it from the news media. Well, I read it on my own social media. Well, I read this one particular article, which may or may not be biased and may or not be severely pushing or be severely against this one thing. Maybe I should look into this myself. Something about that doesn't make sense. I'm not going to trust the source. Like, there's always what is there? There's three sides to every story. There's yours, there's mine, and then there's the truth. It's okay to seek the truth, right?
We live in a society now that we have our own truths.
Right. Well,
whole another story there.
Whole nother subject.
No, when it comes to fitness, there are multiple paths to get to where we want to go, and there is no right or wrong path per se. There are just some that are going to be better than others, and some that are going to be more effective than others, some more efficient than others. But the key is to do more than just one thing to improve our longevity.
Right. I basically just wanted to say, hey, there's a lot of information out there, but make sure the information that you're getting, you're not just getting one piece of the puzzle. You're trying to get as much as the big picture as possible, and you're doing things that are going to best fit your goals down the road of life in order to age well.
Yep. Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast. And until next time, keep aging well. If you have topics you would like to have us discuss on the Aging Well podcast, please click on the links in the episode description to send us a text or record your message or comments. We'd love to hear from you and how we can help you age well. If you benefit from the Aging Well podcast and would like to support the content financially, please click on the Support the Show link or support our affiliates and advertisers.